My name is Margo Royer. I'm from Du Bois, Pennsylvania. I'm the victim of federal court corruption, educational fraud, attorney misconduct, and violations of civil rights.
Is there anything as you were reading that you thought, oh, I wish I also was saying this? Anything else you want to add?
Well, it's mostly covered in the questions, I think. I feel really warm, like I'm burning up.
You got a tremendous court saga. That don't forget. I mean, what you have gone through in the federal court in particular is just astonishing.
Do you think I covered it? Is there anything that particularly struck you as like really messing up? Like when I said John Lucchini, I couldn't pronounce his last name. I should have known that was going to happen. Okay. All right. Yeah. There's going to be a lot come out in the questioning. There'll be a lot that they did that's very manipulative that will come out.
Well, let me ask you first about Sandusky.
Okay.
How does Jerry Sandusky fit into this story?
Well, during the time that I was employed at University Park for 2 years, now mind you, that was August 1994 through August 1996. I worked very close to the area where the athletic buildings were. I worked in the Pollock area, and I had no knowledge that Jerry Sandusky was around or who Jerry Sandusky was. All I really knew was that several of the janitorial employees that had been there forever talked about someone who, they called him a goddamn queer, and I heard that repeatedly. But to me, at that point, I thought that meant that was the person's sexual orientation. I had no idea that we were talking about a pedophile or someone who was a rapist. But that someone evidently was nearby, but I had no idea how close he was. And after all these years, I mean, I never knew that. And all these years later, I remember, and it's partly from seeing some of the things on the news, but some things came up and it was kind of like a light bulb went off because, like, wait a minute. I remember being called into my supervisor's office one day and being questioned with 50 questions all about this man who had come upstairs to the 8th floor of Beaver Hall with a young boy and came in, got off the elevator, and it was apparent that there was some type of a conflict. I thought the boy was being reprimanded, and I just assumed that this was a grandparent and a grandchild, and they'd come to visit a resident there in the dormitory. But as I reported to my supervisor, they came in and they sat down in the study lounge area in opposite chairs, and they were sitting near the entranceway. And it appeared to me that he had put this boy in timeout was the type of situation it appeared to be to me. And I said to the man, I approached him and I apologized that I hadn't gotten a chance to get into that area yet because the students, every Sunday night they trashed everything. And after the weekend on Monday mornings, there's pizza boxes and Pepsi bottles and just you name it was all over the place. So I approached him and I apologized, sir. I said, I haven't had a chance to get in here yet this morning. He said, oh, no, that's fine, no problem. So, but it seemed as though after 10 minutes that there still appeared to be some type of a problem between him and the boy. And, I was trying to be friendly. And I said, again, sir, I apologize. And at that point, the man was very much annoyed that I approached him and basically interrupted. I couldn't tell that they had even been in the middle of a conversation, but he was annoyed that I interrupted them. So he did get up, he and the boy got up and they left a short time after that. But that was the extent of that occasion. Some other things, and it took a while before I actually could remember this because we're talking back in somewhere between 1994 and 1996, but we had been alerted by the supervisors at Penn State in the Pollock area dormitories to keep our eye out for missing boys' underwear. aside from that, the only other, I can tell you that while I was in a deposition hearing, it was a break in a deposition hearing at the office of McQuaid Blasco in State College. One of their attorneys, and believe me, they are not particularly cordial to someone who is suing Penn State. One of their attorneys wanted to know if I had, if I knew of a person by a certain name, which to me at that point in time, we're talking like 99, 2000, I had no possible idea who they were talking about. I'd never heard the name Jerry Sandusky before, and even if I heard it, I wouldn't remember it. I would never make an association. Now, if he would have said the way they refer to him at Penn State as that goddamn queer, excuse my French, then possibly I would have known. Now, my whole case, how does it correlate to the Jerry Sandusky? I think more so, especially because of the release of the Free Report, and I've haven't been able to complete the whole entire thing, but I got through the first 70 pages, and by the time I got there, I realized that, wait a minute, this happened the same exact time that I got into the problem with my degree program. The same exact time that I wrote the letter to President Graham Spanier about the problem I had in my degree program with child care clearances. It was exactly the beginning of January. And they could not do anything to help me for something I never understood why it happened. They had all kinds of excuses why they removed me from this degree program after they finally realized that the excuse they used wouldn't work. You know, it had holes all through it, that I committed a confidentiality violation while they were doing this field work, when actually the pictures that I had taken were never even developed. So, and beyond that, once they couldn't say it was a confidentiality violation, they had other excuses they used for removing me from my degree program. But anyway, because I fought that and I went to the Office of Civil Rights for Education, I filed several complaints with them over this matter. Shortly after that, I became disciplined in my employment with several additional matters that didn't make sense, that never should have occurred. So how does that relate to Jerry Sandusky? The way I feel about this problem is they couldn't do anything for me, okay? They wanted me to spend $100,000 of my money that I really never had. I had to take out loans at 29% interest rate to fight this, okay? They couldn't help me, but Graham Spanier could sit there and figure out how to award Jerry Sandusky emeritus status, but they couldn't help me. And I had done nothing wrong. At least that I have no idea possibly what their allegations could have been. But I do know that I did have child care clearances. It was a brand new program at Penn State. The instructors would not take my clearances from me. I said, here they are, you know, what are you going to do with these? And they said, hang on to them. So therefore, at the same exact time that the Jerry Sandusky allegations came forward that there was something to the rumors, that was the same time that they took me out of my degree program for I can't say it was unstated reasons. The reasons that they gave weren't substantial. Pictures of children in the Head Start program appeared in our local newspaper several times a year with every one of them's name right underneath the picture. So why would 3 pictures that I took when I was asked to, a mother asked me to take these pictures. The girls actually were at my babysitter's with my daughter every day. I didn't realize that at the time. And the father of these girls was in my military unit with me. But for some reason, even though I had this woman's name written on a brown paper lunch bag to send the pictures to her once they were developed, no one would hear that. No one cared. No one wanted to know the evidence I had to prove that I had done absolutely nothing wrong, that this was not a confidentiality violation. Particularly so that the pictures weren't developed. At the campus, different people made remarks, particularly John Lucchini. I remember him saying that this was due to a matter where I had been removed from my degree program for having taken inappropriate pictures of children. And that fueled the fire even worse. That's why I wrote to Graham Spanier, requested his help with this. But it just seemed that no matter what I've done, I have not been able to get any legal help and any closure to this problem. The attorneys that I did find, actually, they came to me. It took me a matter of time to realize that there were very serious conflicts of interest with them.
All right, let me ask you a basic question. What is a clearance?
Okay, this is the, there's a couple different types of child care clearances. Act 34 is one. I think it might be 54 or 51, but there's a couple types of clearances that we had to have in order to prove that we haven't been in any trouble with the law, that we don't have any, it's a background check. And it's mandatory. The state requires that they have those. And I believe the problem was that they didn't have everyone's in place. The day that they collected them in class, my daughter, who was about 2.5 years old, had the flu, and they didn't collect mine. So I believe that is where I think the Send Clear Head Start agency just went totally berserk, went overboard on this, and they just decided if I didn't have clearances, then I shouldn't have ever been there. And Penn State didn't want to admit their negligence. They didn't want to admit what they were accusing me of, and people just they were scrambling for anything they could. It was a witch hunt. They finally ended up using the reason that they removed me from my degree program was that I disobeyed them in the manner that I took the pictures to Walmart. And certainly with all the fiasco that this had already created, of course I was going to take this roll of film to Walmart and get the pictures developed. I had forgot about it. It was all summer long. I never took them in. So when all this happened, I went to Walmart. I took the roll of film in. It had a lot of pictures of my own daughter on the roll of film. And I thought, I am getting these pictures developed because I don't know what they're trying to say here, but I'm going to prove. I'm going to prove that there's nothing on here. I feel like I'm being falsely accused here. So when I got a lot of harassing phone calls from my instructor. I got harassing phone calls from this woman named Cheryl Smith, who was a placement coordinator at the Head Start program. She called me and she demanded to know, she says, "Where do you live?" And I said, "Excuse me?" I said, why do you want to know? She says, "I want to know where you live." And I said, what's going on? And she says, "You have pictures." She says, "I have to have that roll of film." And I told her, "Well, if you just said so yesterday," but I said, I took them into Walmart. They're already at Walmart being developed. And apparently they felt that that was another violation. Okay, so when the pictures were developed, she was to meet me at Walmart and on such and such a day at such and such a time, like 2:30 in the afternoon or whatever it was. But it's been since 1998 when this occurred. She didn't show up. She absolutely never showed up at Walmart, and then blamed me for not meeting her. Now, when I got to Walmart, I asked to see the pictures. The clerk there, she pulled the pictures from the file and automatically started ringing them up in the register. And I told her, no. I said, I just wanted to see the pictures. And she says, well, you're not going to take them? And I said, well, no, I didn't want to take them. I wanted to wait till later. And it was quite embarrassing to try to explain why you were going to go to Walmart and look at pictures and not pick them up. But she already had them rung in the register. So I said, okay, well, all right, well, never mind. She says, because I tried to say something about someone else was coming in. And she says, well, you can't leave them here. You can't leave them here till they come after them. We won't hold them for you. So I said, okay, never mind. I'll take the pictures. But that in itself is what the dean of Penn State University said was the reason for my being removed. That's what they shifted. Okay, at first, I was able to prove that there were 2 grades. And there's another piece there that I have to tell you about. It's very key, very significant here. Okay, but anyway, they finally settled on the thing where I disobeyed them and didn't follow instructions about having my own pictures. These phone calls from a woman who I did not know, who I'd never met, ordering me what to do with my own pictures. It was ridiculous. at any rate, when what's really significant about the grade change, okay, I tried to tell them that this was not my grade, that I had another grade at home. It was at home on my desk, and I would come back later that day to work, and I would have the grade with me and prove to them this was all a mistake, and I thought it should be done there. But it wasn't. No one wanted to listen to me. No one wanted to hear what I had to say. So it seemed very odd to me, because it proved to me this wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. Later that day, when I went to work, I took all my books, my purse, and everything that I had with me into the janitorial closet and set it on the shelf like I had always done. Okay? So at break time, I went into the restroom, the women's restroom right across the hallway. And when I did, I started to come out of there. See, normally at break time, I would go straight to another building. But this one day, I went in the restroom. And as I was coming out, I could have sworn I heard someone shuffling around across the hallway. And there was nothing over there but a janitorial closet, with nothing in it but things like cleaning supplies, a big trash barrel, a mop and a bucket. Why was someone in the janitorial closet? So I kind of took it real slow and came out of that restroom kind of slowly, just waiting to see what was going on. And I kind of suspected, I thought I knew what was going to happen. And here, sneaking out of that janitorial closet, was my boss's boss, the director of business affairs of the Du Bois campus, whose position would be equivalent to that of Gary Schultz at main campus, with a piece of paper in his hand. And the instant that he looked at me and saw me, he said, as though he saw a ghost. And it was extremely awkward. I just looked at him like, what, I just kept staring, looked at him, and, and he just like regained his composure and went about his business. And it was very obvious that he'd been caught red-handed, and I knew what was on the paper. I didn't ask him to look at it. I didn't have to ask him to look at it because I knew what it was. The thing that I wasn't upset, really, because I pretty much didn't trust this man anyway. But what had happened was when I went home that day, I had the common sense enough to call a friend of mine who teaches the same program at another university in Pennsylvania. And I called him and told him what was going on. This is the type of thing that they're stating, that there was another grade. They have a paper written up to change my grade. That grade was being used as the reason to fail me and remove me from my degree program. And my friend, Ralph, told me, send that to me. Fax both of those papers to me right away. And so I did. And by the time that I came back to work that day, I had already sent it somewhere. The time and date were stamped on that fax copy, and so all I had to do was get Ralph to send that to me. He sent it to me in the snail mail, and therefore I retained a copy of my original true grade. I never did see the actual original grade again, which to me verifies exactly what had happened. It was John Lucchini, the director of business affairs, that had taken the grade.
What was on the photographs?
The photographs was nothing other than the last day of the Head Start facility in Clearfield. It was June, and that was actually the last day that any of these kids would be together. And they were going to take them to Parker Dam. They had a big picnic plan, but because of us coming in from the occupational therapy program, they decided to cancel. They had to cancel the Parker Dam trip. But what they did was they had a little plastic pool, and they put this out front of the building, and all these kids were able to still do something. They were jumping around in the water and playing. So basically what happened was this one woman, her name was Bernice Bainey. Okay, she said that, it was just such a shame because they weren't going to be together anymore, and these girls weren't going to see their friends, and for various reasons they may not see them all summer, or maybe not even again. And she says, oh, darn, I wish I would have brought my camera. And so I told her, well, you know what? I said, I think my camera's out in the car. I said, I'm pretty sure it's in my glove compartment. So I told Bernice, let me go get it. And so I went, and this was like an old-fashioned camera. It wasn't like what we have now, but you had to have film. And I realized once I got back there with a camera, I didn't have any film. So I asked them at the Head Start agency, would they mind if I would just go across the street to Magic Market and get some film, and I'd be able to get some pictures then. And they said, sure, don't be gone very long. And I said, okay, it's right over here. And I said, okay, I'll be right back. And while I was gone, they got these kids together and figured out how to get them in a group shot so everybody would be in the picture, and line them up in a couple different rows so everybody's face was right there and could be seen. And they lined them all up so they were all in the pictures. It wasn't me like running around and sneaking a shot here and sneaking a shot there. They were group photos, just like what's in the Progress, our local newspaper, that's in there 2 or 3 times a year. And I had no idea that there was a problem at all. We had an instructor. Our lead instructor brought a friend of hers in who does a lot of this field work activities in occupational therapy, and she told us how wonderful a Polaroid camera was, a great tool for us to be able to use and to document everything that we encountered. We had to keep a log at the end of this field work event, and so therefore that would enable us to better remember and document what was going on. So I had absolutely no idea that what I did was in any way unethical. I don't know what they twisted it into. I do know that I feel that they are negligent, that they did not collect the child care clearances, that mine weren't there. They've never admitted that to me, and I was never given an explanation for why what I did was so horribly wrong that I had to be removed from my degree program. There's been a lot. It was investigated. They had the dean, the provost come to the Du Bois campus, and there was meetings with myself, and there was meetings with the instructors where I wasn't present. There was meeting with the CEO, and there's a lot of things that came out that they wouldn't tell me occurred with Penn State. But I do know that my last day, I ended up being terminated from my employment after this, like within 6 months, and my final day at the Du Bois campus was the same final day for the lead instructor. They advertised in the local newspaper that they were looking for someone, a new occupational therapy, instructor at Penn State. I know that Cheryl Smith, that called me and harassed me about the pictures and where to meet her and all, I know that she testified that she had already met me and felt that there was a problem. Like, she testified this to Dr. John Kerr. There was a problem, some type of a problem with me, and that she had met me in the classroom, which was entirely false. I never met this woman, ever. I didn't know who she was. And after all this had come down several years later, and I always said I was going to do this, and then one day I was driving past there in Phillipsburg, and I stopped by. I went into the Head Start facility, and I said, I'd like to speak to Miss Cheryl Smith, please. And someone went upstairs to her office and got her. Oh, they asked me who was it that wanted to meet with her, and I said, well, my name's Margaret, and which is actually almost the same as Margo. Margo is just a shortened version of Margaret. But anyway, they went up the stairs, and they brought this Cheryl Smith down, and I said, oh, hi. I said, you know what? I said, your name's Cheryl Smith. And she said, yes. And I said, you know what? I said, I don't believe we've ever met. And she says, no. She says, no, we certainly haven't. She says, what's your name? And I said, I'm Margo. My name is Margo Royer. I'm the student that you removed from the Penn State Occupational Therapy degree program back in 1998 for some type of confidentiality violation. And I said, and you know what, Cheryl? And I made sure I had an audience. Everyone in that office was listening. I said, Cheryl, you know what? I said, I just wanted to stop by to see what someone like you looks like that could possibly do something like this to the life of a child. Miss Smith went running back up the stairs. After about 3 steps up the stairs, she turned around, but you said your name was Margaret. And I got in my car, and I felt very satisfied that day that I did that, because this woman deserved it, and I made sure my voice was plenty loud enough to be heard. I did have an audience. I wasn't sure if there would be repercussions, but at that point, I felt so strongly about this, I didn't care.
The sequence of events. When did the grades happen, and when did the photographs happen?
Well, the field work, And see, this is another thing. I wasn't allowed to enter my second year at Penn State occupational degree program, but the clinical field work had to be pulled in advance of the second year because there wasn't time, there wasn't room to fit it all in. So they had me pull field work for the second year. Well, how can they fail me on it when I never entered my second year? Okay? That was one legal point that they would never allow to come forward. But the field work was actually pulled like near the end of June. That's when the pictures were taken. And this came up when the new school year was supposed to start, like a week prior to the new school year starting in August. That's the time frame. So a couple months had transpired before all this.
A couple months between the photos and the grades, or the other way around? What was first?
The photos.
Photos. All right.
Well, the grade changed, but the grade itself that was changed, okay, the grade change occurred before there was any mention of photos at all.
Okay. All right. So they first tried to get you out by a grade change, and you caught them.
I did.
And they had to.
I caught them red-handed.
They had to retreat, so then they come up with the photos.
Yes, that's correct.
And they claimed that you taking photos that the child care endorsed was somehow a violation of confidentiality.
Right. They forbid me to speak to anyone at that agency. Absolutely forbid it. As though there was going to be some type of repercussions against me, legal repercussions for trying to speak to anyone at the agency. They also tried to discipline me for writing a letter to Bernice Bainey, the woman who had given me the brown paper lunch bag with her name and address on it to return the pictures. Okay, I wrote her a letter and said, Bernice, I don't know what's going on here, with all this, can you tell me? But, yeah, and your question, you were...
I'm just trying to figure out what happened when, and it seems to me that they wanted to get you.
Absolutely.
And they first tried with the grades, and you caught them. And so then they used the photography. But the photography was authorized.
But it wasn't authorized by the leaders it was authorized by the employees.
Yeah, well, I mean, who thinks you have to go ask the leader?
Yeah, right.
Excuse me, I want to take a picture of the White House. Let me go talk to the president first.
Yeah.
It's a photograph,
right.
for heaven's sake. And when it was raised with you, they were being developed. I mean, they haven't been distributed anywhere. Nothing's happened.
Right. Well, I went to the campus police, okay, their security at the Du Bois campus, and when I started my shift that evening, as soon as I got the pictures in my hand, and I said, here, I want you to witness this for me. I said, here we are. Look at these pictures. Here's every picture in this whole entire roll of film. Here's the negatives to prove. And I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put these in this envelope. And there was one of those mailboxes, those blue mailboxes right at the campus. I said, I'm going to throw this in the mailbox. You witness this for me. You know what's on here. And you know that it's gone and should be done. And I thought it would be done. But they never would talk to the woman with the brown paper lunch bag. They wouldn't talk to the campus security. They wouldn't talk to the Head Start facility. Cheryl Smith.
Factually, I'm not sure. When did you get thrown out of the degree? You got thrown out of the degree program because of this stuff, right?
That's what they said, yes.
Okay, right. Okay, I just got my wires crossed on something. One thing, I got to go see who's down here, and if I can just, don't forget a key. When Margo, she sued in federal court, she got run around by attorneys, charged $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 before she found Don. Her case was assigned to a guy by the name of D. Brooks Smith, who was a district judge in Pittsburgh. She didn't know that this guy's on Penn State faculty. He's a Mason. There's all kinds of Mason connections. After her case got thrown out, she appealed her case. While she appealed her case, the district court judge who had her case was elevated and appointed to the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, where she appealed her case to. There's a lot of Mason connections, sinister stuff, misdealing. You got a real good court aspect of your saga that I don't even know that you're as savvy with as you need to be, but you understand it all now because we worked hard on this to open.
Yeah.
I'm going to step out for a few. You guys are doing just fine.
Okay.
why did they want to get you?
Well, okay. I believe there's a combination of reasons.
Let me get you to start over and say, I believe there's a combination of reasons why they wanted to get me.
Okay.
When you're ready.
I believe there's a combination of reasons why they wanted to get me. I was kind of out on a limb, basically. Maybe all of those reasons add up to me being out on a limb and being easily accessible. I was the only female janitor at the Du Bois campus, okay? Not that I'm saying that it's a type of sexual discrimination or gender discrimination. I don't necessarily believe that that's what it was, although the crooked attorneys that I had in the beginning tried to twist it into that. It's more about nepotism. It's more about taking a job from someone who a member of their family wanted. It's about money. They want the money to stay in the family. It's about the camaraderie of all these people who have this opinion, who can't understand why should I have something, why am I better than someone that I should get this and they didn't. It's partly because I was engaged to someone who was a large employer of that small rural area, and he had quite a bit of camaraderie between contractors, employers. I mean, everyone knew him, and everyone knew that the scenario where, we broke up and it was ugly. And so, they wanted to come after me. They just couldn't understand how I got the job in the first place. I guess there were 300 applicants, and my name came up. To this day, I don't know absolutely if it was my ex-fiance that pulled some strings and got me in there, but it's very possible that he did, and I believe it's very possible that he pulled another set of strings to get me out of there. I ended up taking him to small claims court. He promised that he was going to give me the money from a vehicle that he'd co-signed. I had quite a bit of equity built up in the vehicle. He had written it on paper that he was going to give me that money. He didn't, and I took him to court. He got caught lying, and the judge awarded me the money. And so, he really wanted revenge. So, but I was out on the limb pretty much. I was different, they said, and I was the type that was I would pursue the things that I was after. I was very outspoken when I felt there was a problem. And I didn't have the family support in the area where a lot of people, had brothers and sisters. I didn't have family support being not from that area. So, and I think that explains it.
Did you, when you had the grade situation come up, did you think at first that they were going to try to get you fired or whatever? Or did you think what did you think?
Well, I believe that it would be impossible for them to fire me because, number one, I didn't feel I did anything wrong, okay? I wasn't aware how manipulative the Penn State really is. I couldn't imagine the things that they could make it appear that I was someone who shouldn't be there. And also because I felt like I had found a way to fight the grade change through the Office of Civil Rights of Education, and that protected me. And those things were supposed to protect someone. If there is a complaint filed with the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, they shouldn't have to worry about losing their job. There were several things that occurred. One of them was there was a gas line leak on the campus, and basically I would have fit under the Whistleblower Protection Act. And I did receive my very first warning letter on the job after we had an incident with a gas line leak. I emailed my supervisor. I let him know that I smelled this gas. Everybody could smell it. It wasn't like it was a big secret. In my mind, I had done nothing wrong. You could drive by the front of the campus and smell gas, and everybody knew that. But when I emailed my boss, his response was that if we are doing our job properly, we will dump the mop water down the drain, and therefore there will no longer be any gas smell. I mentioned to different people, can't you smell it? Don't you know what's going on? I mean, what is this? It was on the one side of the campus. So finally, I reported to work. This was sometime after that. I reported to work one day. Okay, so on that day, I was cleaning the auditorium, and I had no idea anything was going on. I mean, I was down cleaning the seats and the chairs, minding my own business. And here, someone finally got my attention and said, "What are you doing? Come on, we're supposed to get out of here." And I said, "What are you talking about?" They said, "Come on." And here, the school nurse, who was standing at the end of the hallway, she had evidently sent someone in to come get me, called in a building evacuation, called the fire company. And everything on campus was being evacuated due to a gas line leak. And what that had to do with me, nothing. But for some reason, certain people who have a way of handling things in the manner that they do at Penn State, they decided, and this came out in time, I will tell you that the fire chief did ask me to come with him, and he took me to different places and said, "Is this where you think the leak is? Did you smell it here?" And I said, no, it's not there. It's out here. But I was seen walking around with the chief of the fire police. But that's the only, I have no association with this beyond, mentioning it to my boss in an email. Anyway, I discovered a matter of maybe 10 days later that the campus CEO put out the information that what this was all about. She says, "Oh, yes, it was quite exciting here 2 weeks ago. What happened was a disgruntled student had sprayed pepper spray, therefore causing the evacuations of the buildings of the Du Bois campus." So within days of that happening, I received my very first written warning letter on the job for a keys issue, which was prior policy. I mean, it was the placement of the keys. We always did things the same way, but for some reason, I was getting a warning letter. And they backdated some memorandums to make it look like I received information I never received. But that was immediately after the building evacuations and the fire company came. So, there's a number of things that occurred that are violations that I felt. I didn't feel like I was going to lose my job, but they invented these things. They continually invented things or created them so that they were able to fire me. And they manipulated the rules in such a manner, okay? They invented things, they manipulated the rules, and finally, in the end, they set me up. So it was a combination of three things that they did. Now, all these things, they knew I had a problem. And yes, I had a problem. I was removed from my degree program. I had people like John Lucchini that stole my grade, telling people that I'd taken inappropriate pictures of children, which I hadn't. That really irked me. I wrote a letter to President Graham Spanier, and I told him exactly what happened. And I'd been willing to read that letter. I have that letter now. I believe it's on the desk here.
Unplug the microphone, or carry the thing with you. That's easier, probably.
Okay, excuse me just a second here. I do have that letter that I wrote to President Graham Spanier here with me. It just wasn't exactly where I thought it would be. Okay. And this is dated, and these dates are very important. January 25th, 1999. And if you ever have an opportunity to look at the free investigative report, take a quick gander at that date and see what was happening with President Graham Spanier on January 1999. And this is addressed.
What's happening with him? Is
that was when President Spanier was told that Jerry Sandusky decided that he was going to start planning for his retirement. And that was when President Spanier decided that he was going to go ahead and award Jerry Sandusky emeritus status. That was when the lump sum of money was paid to Jerry Sandusky, and they were finalizing what they were going to do for him. Now, this is my letter to President Spanier, and I'm asking him if he can help me in any way. I was referred to President Spanier by the student advocate, who is an attorney at University Park. His name is Jose Texter. And this is a letter I wrote, and some of the wording was actually Mr. Texter's wording, but some of it isn't. Mainly we covered this together. Dear President Spanier, I'm writing this letter to inform you of an unfair, unjust, and incorrect situation that has taken place at Penn State University. I've been hoping you will give this your utmost attention. That was Mr. Texter. Considering that I am a United States veteran currently serving in the National Guard, I am a returning adult student, I am a single parent providing for the sole support of my child, I am a Canadian-born naturalized citizen, American citizen, and I am the only female full-time employee currently working in the technical service department at the Du Bois campus. Last September, I was punitively removed from the degree program I had been working in for 1 year. I have worked extremely hard in the pursuit of a degree. Now that I am a single parent, I wish to improve the quality of life for my child and for myself. Due to circumstances I feel were entirely out of my control, I was failed in a clinical fieldwork exercise while in the occupational therapy degree program at the Du Bois campus. Although I originally passed this clinical and all other academic areas in the program, the instructors did a reevaluation of my fieldwork and gave me a failing grade. This enabled them to entirely remove me from the occupational therapy degree program. Their claim was that I was guilty of a confidentiality violation because I took pictures for a parent of her children at a Head Start program. The alleged violation of the involved agency was concerning 3 pictures of children playing outside together on the last day of their school year. Initially, the supervisor training me gave me permission to leave the clinical site to buy the film. When I returned, most program supervisors and workers helped me line up the children for pictures. Others gave their permission tacitly, observing while I took 3 photos. Several months later, it was vaguely implied to me the reason I was removed from the degree program was because I was not given permission to take the pictures. The instructors at the campus failed to provide the agency with my Pennsylvania State Police child care clearances when the agency requested them for their files. I asked both instructors at the school and my supervisor at the agency, what did they want me to do with the clearances? No one wanted them. They told me to hang on to them. Early in the fall of 1997, I warned my instructors about various false accusations started by vindictive persons concerning my own alleged criminal misconduct. Soon after, I experienced advising difficulties at the campus. The agency's lack of documentation of these clearances became escalated into inappropriate speculation about my intentions, my background, and my character. I asked to have a meeting concerning my promised placement in the occupational therapy class of 1999. It was at this meeting, with my small daughter sitting on my lap, that the CEO of the Du Bois campus told me I may never enter occupational therapy again at any Penn State location. I was told in writing by the agency I may never return there again for any other fieldwork exercise. The Dean of Educational Equity at Penn State, Dr. John Kerr, advised me the university will not tell me what was said. I will need an attorney if I am to ever know this information. I feel I've been made a third party in my own life. How is it possible to be ostracized in this manner without even knowing the basis of the charges against me? I have been the victim of false allegations, which have resulted in severe, punitive, irrational actions against me. Most allegations have not even been partially disclosed to me, making it impossible for me to defend my alleged actions. I do not believe I have behaved inappropriately and find the severe implications that these allegations have created for me are incredibly unjust and unwarranted. I feel I will have great difficulty when seeking employment elsewhere, and I feel apologetic because of these circumstances to the friends and the family who have been supportive of me in the past. This has been a disgrace. I am able to provide a listing of events in chronological order that have led to this bizarre example of how interpretations can be surmised to be known as facts about an individual. I was shocked to hear Dr. Kerr say, "I am not a person who goes by the rules. Therefore, I would not do well in an occupational therapy environment where many rules are necessary." I have never been told to explain what role I have had in the non-academic issues that may have led to the administration's negative interpretations. No one wanted an explanation. They did not want me to be a part of any discussions about myself. I have sought legal advice concerning this matter, and although I did lose an appeal in November with Dr. John Carr, Office of Undergraduate Education, I hope the university will reconsider the seriousness of the allegations against me. I would like to give Penn State University the opportunity to settle this decision, leading to an inexcusable chain of events prior to my going to my congressman and to my state senator. Respectfully yours, Margo Royer.
All right, so they got to get you, they got you. When did you start to seek legal action?
I began seeking legal action even prior to my job being terminated. My aunt and uncle had advised me that this is likely what's next. They're gonna fire you, and I felt that I would be protected because I filed a complaint with the Office for Civil Rights for Education. But even at that, I went to see a local attorney in Du Bois, and he dealt only with the educational problem. And he told me that if this were to proceed into an employment termination case, he would not be able to represent me. So that was actually in 19...
So he was so specialized in his work, or he was just afraid of Penn State?
I believe he was afraid of Penn State. His father was dating Betsy Lesser and the Lesser Lumber organization. I mean, they're huge up that way, and they are big contributors, benefactors for Penn State. So that would be the reason. They're all connected. It's family.
All right, so who filed your action in federal court?
Well, I had paid an attorney who, it was horrible circumstances. It appeared as though it was almost as though it was blackmail, because every weekend I came home, there was another bill in my mailbox, usually for no less than $5,000. Attorney Richard Gaffney was my attorney who moved this case forward, but Attorney Gaffney wanted it to be, he crafted it and sculpted it into exactly what he wanted. He wanted this to be a sexual harassment case, and so he would find only what he felt fit into a sexual harassment agenda and left everything all else out of the case. So therefore, all of these things with the educational problem, he wouldn't permit that to come in. There wasn't much there that was sexual harassment, because, I mean, I was not that type of person in the workplace. I mean, I really, I knew that they were out to get me. I knew that I was being targeted. I didn't really know that it was sexual harassment. That was one of the things, yes, that they would like to use against me. I had a couple guys hit on me, but that was not really the big deal. But anyway, to answer your question, Richard Gaffney is who was supposed to file this, but after I discovered his conflict of interest and that he had been already advising 3-branch campuses of Penn State how to avoid sexual harassment lawsuits, that he actually did have a very serious conflict of interest, and I think they called him on it. I think that the attorneys at McQuaid Blasco law firm did call him on that. and he was reluctant to file that complaint. It was not until he withdrew and refused to file the complaint that my next attorney told him that he damn well better file it, because he charged me over $60,000 and never even gotten the case. We never even got to discovery.
So Gaffney charged you over $60,000,
Yes.
and your case never even
Got off the ground.
Never got off the ground. Say that as a soundbite, if you will, and identify him by first and last name.
Attorney Richard C. Gaffney, who was of the Harrisburg area, charged me over $60,000 for my lawsuit against Penn State, which he sculptured into his legal expertise, which was sexual harassment, and never even made it to discovery.
All right, and so what happened next in the litigation?
Well, next I had to try to scramble to find another attorney, and of course I had a very difficult time finding anyone who would go up against Penn State University. I wish I had met Don Bailey by that time, because Don has said over and over again how much he could have helped me had I come to him sooner. But at that time, I should have realized that it would happen in the same manner. I made a lot of phone calls, scoured the internet to find someone, and finally, after a amount of time, someone did finally call me, and they returned a call. And here, this turned out to be attorney Melvin Vatz of Pittsburgh, and returned my call, and I explained to him what my dilemma was. And it took 2 trips to Pittsburgh before attorney Vatz would tell me that he had a conflict of interest, that he wasn't going to take my case, that he couldn't take my case. He already knew everything. I told him everything. He wouldn't take my case because he actually represents the Teamsters Union. The attorney Gaffney had charged me in the beginning like they were 2 separate cases. There was the Teamsters case over here, and then there was Penn State. And he charged me $15,000 for this and $15,000 for this. And then he turned around and he finally put them together. So then Melvin Vance, what he does is walk me. He said he acted like he was really perturbed at me the one appointment. I came down here to Pittsburgh and I was running extremely late. I was very stressed. He acted like he was angry at me because I was late. And he says, come on, he says, follow me. And he walked me across the streets of downtown Pittsburgh like some scolded schoolchild. And like we were heading to the principal's office. And he says, I have a friend I'm going to introduce you to. And the friend that he introduced me to was this Italian attorney from downtown Pittsburgh named Joel Sansone. And despite the fact that Joel Sansone took nearly $15,000 from me, the only thing that Joel Sansone did was complain about Richard Gaffney, tell Richard Gaffney that he must file that case for me or there would be charges brought against him. They convinced Richard Gaffney that he would indeed file the case, at which he did. And Joel Sansone turned around and took the Teamsters Union off the complaint against my will.
Well, did you ever find a decent attorney?
I finally did find a decent attorney after I'd gone through all of this, after Judge Smith let Sansone withdraw. At that point in time, Judge Smith, it was in Johnstown, and we both had to be present for that. And Sansone and myself, and Sansone was very angry with me because I called some clients of his and asked their opinion of him. I didn't feel there was any problem in why I should not be able to get a referral. That really made Sansone quite angry. And not only that, but I was insisting that Sansone do some work and return the evidence that he had never returned to me. Sansone was out golfing. His name was in the paper. He was in tournaments. He was getting his realtor's license. Sansone was not doing any work for me. And so I decided to get references, and he found out about the references, and I guess that made one of the women quite angry, who returned a phone call to him. But anyhow, we ended up before Judge D. Brooks Smith in Johnstown, and Judge Smith asked me point blank, he says, "Don't you remember me?" And I said, "No." He says, he smiled, he says, "You really don't remember me?" And I said, no. And Judge Smith never offered to tell me what he was talking about. I was very confused what it was. It was evident that Joel Sansone seemed to know what he was talking about, and I didn't think of it for years and years later. And I'll come to that. But anyhow, after Sansone was off of my case, I made a lot of phone calls, and finally I did come upon Don Bailey here in Harrisburg. I don't know how I missed him before, but Don was very good. Don was willing to hear everything I had to say about Penn State. I felt that when I went to see Attorney Vatz and Sansone that they believed I was delusional. They did not believe the things that I said, that I'd been set up. They told me that, doesn't it make sense to you that your actions warranted for these things to happen to you? And I said no. They didn't seem to hear my complaints that I had been set up. But when I came to Don Bailey, Don knew exactly what types of things happen at Penn State. He knows how they have these scenarios that they play out with keys, with video cameras, the hidden surveillance cameras, with files on a desk that they psychologically harass someone and tell them that they've got this file that contains information about them, and then if they don't submit to a psychiatric violation, then they're out of a job. You know, they lay this on your desk. They don't give a damn if you go see a psychiatrist or get a medical evaluation. They want you to reach for that file and find out whether or not it's you, and then they have you. But Don knew these things, and Don listened to me, and Don took my case, and he did not blackmail me the way the other two attorneys did. He was very reasonable in his fees, and he understood. He knew what to argue, and he did argue it, and he took these people. He took Penn State University and made them sit in front of a camera, and he deposed them, and he made them explain these things that they did, and he caught them on videotape perjuring themselves. He brought one in, and they told their side of the story, and of course McQuaid Blasco attorneys tried as they might to get together with the next witness and brief them on what to say, but no, Don wouldn't let them, and Don got into a very, very loud argument with him and said, "No, you son of a bitch, you're not doing that. You're not going to get away with this." And he's not talking to you first. He's going in there. And so their stories didn't match, and one of them was lying. And it proved what I said all along. You know, these things did not happen the way that they claimed. So, I mean, that was great. I had a transcript. I was supposed to have a transcript from that, and I could have proven my case. But because of the judges, we never got off the ground. We were never able to get any of the judges to take this evidence in court and to find that, you know, Penn State has done these things. It's a cover-up. They're hiding this. There's a reason for it. Maybe it's not my business to know what they're covering up, but at least for God's sakes, keep me out of it. You know, I've got a child to raise. I've got a family. I lost a job. I can't get another job because of what they've done to me with the link that they put on the internet about sexual harassment and the things that they claimed that I had done. It's very difficult to find a job anyway nowadays, especially when they have a link out there that they won't take down.
What does their link say to do?
The link is with Widener University, and they claim that they have to have it there because this is public information, this is public knowledge. This court case is sexual harassment court case that Gaffney, the unethical attorney with the conflict of interest, his whole how we went through the steps, which of course failed every step along the way. All of the arguments and litigation that Penn State proffered to argue the sexual harassment lawsuit is all there, and the judge's decision is basically there that I was an untrustworthy employee, that I had breached. It was a breach of trust in looking at my employer's desk when actually the truth is that the hidden surveillance and camera was installed that very day, and I was psychologically harassed that this file contained information about mental health, which I had no clue what it could possibly be. But at that point, I was becoming accustomed to their lies and feeling I had to take action to protect myself. But yes, the link portrays that I was terminated from employment, and that I'm not a trustworthy employee, and that I'm someone who files sexual harassment complaints, which is a big red flag for many employers and for someone in the military.
All right, so you've got the outstanding Don Daly representing you in federal court, and the judges just threw it out?
Well, Dawn represented me on a couple different matters, and one of them was against attorney Richard Gaffney, because that was, it was corruption, it was abuse, it was basically it was theft. And so Dawn and Andy both represented me in different matters, but that was one of the things. And because we weren't able to come up with a, they call it a witness, expert witness, we ended up losing. The judge would simply not hear the case. The judge felt there wasn't anything there, but the judge just didn't listen, because there was such absolute evidence against Richard Gaffney. He had a website where he advertised teaching sexual harassment, ways to avoid sexual harassment in the workplace. And he listed within all of his testimonials, Penn State, I believe Mont Alto was one of the campuses. There were 3 of them there, 3 or 4 of them, and it was absolute. I mean, there is no doubt that he denied it. He denied that he ever had such a business. And the judge couldn't have looked at the evidence, because how could he deny it? I mean, he denied that Annette Cremo, his partner in the Pennsylvania Human Resources Alliance, Annette Cremo contacted me by phone and said, well, I understand that you have this problem, but there is somebody who can help you, and his name is Richard Gaffney. Okay, she and Richard Gaffney had this business together, the PHRA, and they had like pamphlets on how to instruct. They instructed the university how to avoid the sexual harassment lawsuit. So had the judges seen that, there is no way that they would have let Gaffney off the hook. As a matter of fact, the judges allowed Gaffney to go back in after the case was, he actually won. They allowed him to go back in and add to the record, and I never knew that. I never knew that until recently. But as far as the federal court complaint, the judges consistently, part of the problem was Judge D. Brooks Smith, again from Johnstown. Judge D. Brooks Smith said to me, don't you remember me? And at that point in time, I didn't. I really didn't. I couldn't believe that everyone with the last name Smith had something to do with me, had something to do with my lawsuit, was somehow involved in a corrupt, manipulative, whatever to try to, I just couldn't believe it. It was beyond my comprehension that everybody with that last name could be a part of this. But as it turned out, that Judge D. Brooks Smith, who issued summary judgment on my lawsuit, he was the same person that I used to sit across the table from at Masonic Lodge picnics and dinners while I was with my ex-fiancé. Him and his wife sat right across from us. They attended weddings with us. We went to various places, the Shriners parades and all the functions before and after the parades. And this was the same man. I had no idea through all this paperwork that's going back and forth that this is, he didn't go by D. Brooks. He went by, his first name's David Brooks Smith, and he went by his first name then. I had no idea this was the same person.
So can you sum up in a few sentences what your experience with the federal court has been, kind of your indictment of the federal court, if you will?
The federal court is as crooked as a dog's hind leg it could possibly be. They only acknowledge what they want to acknowledge. They ignore everything else. They appear to be bought. And, you know, I had a way of saying this, and probably, maybe this is a little bit callous. Maybe it's too tacky to say here, but I'm going to say it anyhow. You know, when you get to places like New York City and New Jersey, you know, they have a name for someone that sells services, and that's prostitute. But when you come here to federal court in Pennsylvania, they're called Your Honor. And that's how I feel about the federal court system. The comparison is between a prostitute and Your Honor. It may not be them all, but it's the ones that I've run into, and no one expects that kind of thing. It's just, people don't believe that this is what this encompasses. People just have faith, and the faith that they have it's just been such an experience. I've experienced just incredible things. Evidence being stolen right from under my nose. The judge's wait staff, tip staff, has to have only original evidence, but yet they can't give that back to you. They somehow confiscate it. The experiences that I've had just in the courtrooms alone are just incredible. You know, your mind begins to wonder because of the types of things that have happened. You don't know. I mean, you know that you order a transcript from the stenographer, and find out in 18 months that she's shot dead flat out on the streets in Pittsburgh. I mean, it's incredible. It's overwhelming, it's all-encompassing, and it's extremely corrupt.
What can you say to people out there who don't have a clue, which is most people, 99%, don't have a clue that the courts aren't fair? They're oblivious to all of this.
I can tell those people who don't have a clue just a little scenario about my circumstances, because I was a go-getter. You know, I was an Aaron Brockovich. I was going to go down there and I was going to make this asshole pay for what he did to me in my court case. He took my retirement savings and I was going to get it back. And I went to Pittsburgh myself. I didn't have an attorney, but I took this guy on, this Italian attorney who did the walk, the talk, just like someone who was in the mafia, okay, with the last name Sansone. I took this guy to court, and this guy didn't expect what I had laid out for him. I was prepared, and I went in there, and I kept that son of a bitch in the courtroom and made him sweat for 3 days, and he had no idea that he would be there that long. He had no idea how well prepared I was. Himself being an attorney, and someone like me, a janitor for God's sakes, who arrived with a laundry basket full of paperwork. Okay, I took him and his friend Mel Vatz to court, and we stood there for 3 days in front of 12 jurors. And here's the experience. I damn near won that case. I would have won. Had it not been for Sansone, who marched across the street to his office, got a hold of his printer and his computer, and got something on paper. And he presented that to the judge. And what the judge did for him, this case was going my way. All the jurors were going to agree with me until that judge said to the jury, he says, this is what you need to do now. You cannot decide this case based on how you feel, on what you feel may be right in your heart. You cannot decide this case. You must decide this case based on the law. And the law says that when an attorney loses faith in his client, he must withdraw. So in other words, it was his moral and legal responsibility to withdraw from my case, being that I had lost faith in him. So therefore, I lost the court case. Now, if that doesn't tell you how the law is and how the courts are, you've got to realize that, you know, it's not a matter of what's right and wrong. It's who's in charge.
action against Samsung. Did the judge, did you research the issue? Is there case law to say that if a lawyer claims he's lost faith in his client, that they have the right to withdraw?
It is true, but I think that was really stretched in this case. I mean, that was far stretched. I lost faith in him mainly because he just wasn't doing anything. Well, and also he destroyed my
that
case.
Was you. The judge said he had to have lost faith in his client.
No. It was the client had lost faith in the attorney. And once the attorney believes that his client no longer has faith in him, that he has a moral and legal obligation to withdraw.
Okay. All right. You didn't ask him to withdraw?
No, I didn't. I was pleading that he would not withdraw because I didn't have anyone. I didn't have anybody then.
And so he didn't.
He did withdraw because he was.
He wanted to take your money and run.
Yes, the judge did award me like 25% of the money back. But on my way home, which is very interesting, my BMW it blew up. We were starting back home and the head gasket went. So it was parked in the parking garage all day long. You know, I'd been there for 3 days. And on the way home, I was out of a BMW. Not surprising.
Oh, goodness. Anything else you want to say?
Well, I just basically, I feel the courts are very corrupt. I feel that Penn State has hidden this all along. I feel that there is very strong possibility this is related to some way that Penn State wanted to cover up the child care clearances issue. It may be the Jerry Sandusky. I think that was probably what got them to panic like they did. But it's not right. It's not right that this has been hidden. I've never had my day in court. I tried to reopen this case. I was denied a week ago, and I still want all of these things to come out. It's not fair what they've done. They've taken my education from me. That education was not only the benefit that I was working for at Penn State. I would have never lowered myself to become a janitor had it not been for that tuition benefit. But not only that, I had a contracted agreement with the military. I had extended to get my educational benefits, and I feel that Penn State stole that benefit from me. I had to finish my commitment with the military. But I never was able to get the education that I agreed to. That they stole. And they should be responsible for that, for the education, for the employment, for what this has done to my child. I've not been able to maintain steady employment in the Du Bois area. The unemployment office, for God's sakes, moved right onto the campus. You know, I mean, they control it all, including the courts. And they should pay because they have been negligent. They have been negligent with the child care clearances, with the whole cover-up, with the Jerry Sandusky issue. And every one of those victims, including myself, I'm not the same type of victim as the Jerry Sandusky victims, but every single one of those victims, they are responsible for the actions that they've committed and their negligence.